The city never slowed down, not even for people like Nia Thompson. From morning to evening, the sidewalks stayed crowded with rushing feet, loud horns, and faces that rarely looked up. Nia stood near the corner of a busy street, holding a stack of colorful flyers against her chest. Her arms were tired, her shoes worn, but her posture stayed straight. Each flyer represented hope. Hope for extra income, hope for her small dream of one day opening an art cafe, and hope for a better life for her and her younger brother. Community art classes, she said softly again and again, offering flyers to strangers who often passed without a glance. Some waved her away. Others ignored her completely. Nia didn't let it harden her heart. She had learned that kindness was something you gave freely, not something you waited to receive. Across the street, a sleek black car pulled to a stop. The noise around it seemed to quiet as suited men stepped out first, scanning the area. Then Kang Joon-ho emerged. Tall, composed, and unreadable, he looked like a man carved from stone. As the CEO of a powerful and dangerous organization, he was used to being feared, admired, and obeyed. He was also used to being alone. Women often tried to get his attention, through smiles, whispers, or bold steps into his path. Joon-ho ignored them all. To him, emotions were weaknesses and attachments were risks he could not afford. As he began walking toward a nearby building, Nia stepped back to avoid a fast-moving cyclist. She didn't see Joon-ho in time. Their shoulders brushed and the flyers slipped from her hands, scattering across the pavement. "I'm so sorry," Nia said immediately, dropping down to gather them. Her voice was calm, not frightened. Joon-ho stopped. That alone was unusual. He looked down, expecting fear or apology mixed with desperation. Instead he saw focus. Nia carefully picked up each flyer, then stood and offered one to him with a small, polite smile. "You dropped into my space too," she said gently. "So I think we're even." For the first time in years, Joon-ho felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. Her eyes held no interest in his status, no attempt to impress him. She didn't even know who he was. He took the flyer without thinking. As Joon-ho walked away moments later, the city noise rushed back in. But something had changed. Behind him, Nia returned to her spot, unaware that a single, simple encounter had just shifted the course of two lives forever. The black car moved smoothly through the city streets, but Kang Joon-ho barely noticed the buildings passing by. His gaze was fixed on the flyer resting in his hand. The paper was simple, a little worn at the edges, yet he had not let his assistant take it away. The words were clear and hopeful, talking about art, community, and dreams built from small beginnings. None of it matched the life he lived. He closed his eyes briefly and without warning, her face returned to his mind. Nia Thompson. He did not know her name yet, but he remembered her voice, steady and kind. She had not bowed, flirted, or trembled. She had simply spoken to him like he was human. That thought followed him all the way into his office. Throughout the day, Joon-ho sat through meetings, reviewed reports, and gave sharp orders. His men listened carefully as they always did. Still, something was different. Mrs. Park, his longtime assistant, noticed it immediately. He was quieter, distracted. When she mentioned a scheduled dinner meeting, he waved it away without explanation. That evening, back on the same street, Nia laughed softly as she counted the few coins she had earned. It wasn't much, but it was honest work. She tucked the remaining flyers into her bag and walked home with her brother Malik, who chatted excitedly about school and his dreams of becoming a designer. "You look happy today," Malik said, glancing up at her. "I met someone interesting," Nia replied thoughtfully. Just for a moment, though. She didn't know why the encounter stayed with her. The man had looked cold, distant, but there had been something lonely behind his eyes. She shook the thought away, reminding herself not to read too much into a stranger. Across the city, Joon-ho stood alone in his penthouse, looking out at the lights below. He realized something unsettling. For the first time, power felt heavy instead of comforting. Wealth felt loud. And silence, which he once welcomed, now felt empty. "Find her," he said quietly into his phone. Mrs. Park paused. "Sir?" "The girl from today," Joon-ho continued. "The one with the flyers. I want to meet her again. Not because he wanted to control her. Not because he wanted anything from her. But because one brief glance had reminded him of a world he had forgotten. A world where warmth still existed. As night settled over the city, two people lay awake, unaware that their thoughts were quietly circling each other. Fate had already taken its first step. Morning sunlight spilled across the city, warming the sidewalks as life began again. Nia adjusted the strap of her bag and stepped into the small community center where she volunteered twice a week. The space smelled faintly of paint and paper, and the walls were covered with artwork from children and local artists. This place mattered to her. It was where dreams were allowed to breathe. She had just finished arranging flyers on a table when the front door opened. Nia looked up, and froze for half a second. It was him. The serious man from the street stepped inside, dressed simply today without the heavy presence of bodyguards. His posture was still confident, but his eyes searched the room with quiet curiosity. For a moment neither of them spoke. "Oh," Nia said first, breaking the silence. "You're the flyer guy." Something in Kang Joon-ho's chest eased at her words. No fear. No formality. Just recognition. "I am," he replied. "I wanted to see what it was about." She smiled, genuinely pleased. "Then you came to the right place." Nia began explaining the center's mission: art classes for kids, creative workshops, and a safe place for people who felt unseen. Joon-ho listened closely. No one had spoken to him like this in years, without caution or hidden motives. She spoke with passion, her hands moving as her eyes lit up. They sat across from each other at a small table, talking longer than either expected. Joon-ho introduced himself simply as Jun. He didn't mention his company, his power, or the life he lived after dark. For once, he wanted to exist without a title. Nia shared her dreams of opening an art cafe someday, a place where creativity and comfort could meet. Joon-ho found himself imagining it, picturing her behind the counter, smiling the same way she did now. When a group of children rushed in, laughter filling the room, Nia stood quickly. "Sorry? Duty calls." He watched her interact with the kids, patient and warm, kneeling to their level. Something deep inside him shifted. This world, her world, felt real in a way his never had. As he prepared to leave, Nia walked him to the door. "I'm glad you came," she said honestly. "So am I," Joon-ho replied. As he stepped outside, Joon-ho knew one thing with certainty. If he wanted to be part of her world, he would have to be honest eventually. And the truth he carried was heavy. Behind him, Nia watched him go, unaware that the man she had just welcomed carried a name that ruled fear itself. The days that followed passed quietly, yet something unseen had begun to grow. Kang Joon-ho returned to the community center more often than he expected. Sometimes he brought supplies. Other times he simply came to sit and watch. Each visit felt lighter than the last, as if the walls of his carefully guarded life were slowly loosening. To Nia, Jun, just Jun, became a familiar presence. He never interrupted or demanded attention. He listened more than he spoke, asking thoughtful questions about the art classes, the children, and her dreams. She found herself looking forward to his visits, though she didn't fully understand why. One afternoon, dark clouds rolled in without warning. The center closed early, and Nia stepped outside just as rain began to fall. She pulled her jacket tighter and hurried down the steps, but her foot slipped on the wet pavement. Before she could hit the ground, strong arms caught her. For a brief moment, everything stilled. The rain, the street, the noise of the city, all of it faded. Joon-ho held her carefully, steady and sure, making sure she was safe. Nia's hands rested lightly against his chest, her heart beating faster from surprise rather than fear. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. She nodded, a little breathless. "Yeah. Thanks to you." Neither moved right away. It wasn't rushed or awkward. It was simply warm. A hug born from instinct, not intention. When they finally stepped apart, both felt the change it left behind. They walked together under the rain, sharing Joon-ho's umbrella. Their shoulders brushed now and then, and each small contact felt meaningful. Nia talked about Malik and how hard she worked to give him a better future. Joon-ho listened, admiring her strength more with every word. "You care a lot about people," he said. She smiled. "Someone has to." At her apartment building they paused. The rain softened and the air felt calm. "I'm glad I met you," Nia said, her voice gentle but certain. "So am I," Joon-ho replied, meaning it more than he could explain. As he walked away, Joon-ho realized something dangerous and beautiful at the same time. He was no longer just visiting her world. He was becoming part of it. And for the first time he wasn't sure if he wanted to leave. The morning air felt heavier than usual. Nia stood near a small cafe window, sipping tea as the city moved past her. Her phone buzzed softly in her hand. She frowned when she saw the headline that had been shared in a local news post. Kang Joon-ho, powerful CEO, seen expanding business influence. The name struck her like a sudden wind. Her eyes scanned the article, then the photo beneath it. The man in the picture wore a familiar calm expression, his gaze distant and controlled. It was June. Her chest tightened. CEO. Powerful. Fear. The article hinted at shadows behind his success, careful words hiding dangerous truths. Nia felt confused, hurt, and strangely disappointed, not because of who he was, but because he hadn't trusted her with the truth. Later that day, Joon-ho arrived at the community center, carrying a box of art supplies. He stopped the moment he saw her face. The warmth he was used to seeing was gone, replaced by quiet distance. "We need to talk," Nia said. They stepped outside, standing beneath a tree where they had once laughed together. The silence between them was thick. "You never told me who you really are," she said softly. "I found out on my own." Joon-ho didn't deny it. He lowered his gaze. "I wanted to. I just didn't know how." "Was any of it real?" she asked. "All of it," he answered immediately. "Everything I felt. Every moment with you." He explained his world. Not the violence but the loneliness, the constant need for control, and the fear of being seen only for his power. He admitted he was afraid she would pull away the moment she knew his name. Nia listened quietly. When he finished, she took a step back. "You should have trusted me enough to choose," she said. "I can't build something on half-truths." Joon-ho nodded, accepting her words without argument. "I'm sorry," he said. "More than you know." She walked away, her heart aching, not because she didn't care, but because she cared too much. That night, Joon-ho stood alone in his apartment, realizing something important. Power had never cost him anything before. Love already had. And this time he wasn't sure how to fix it. The distance between them did not last long, but it felt endless. Joon-ho tried to stay away, believing space was the safest gift he could give Nia. He stopped visiting the community center. He avoided the streets she walked. Yet the more he pulled back, the more the danger around him crept forward. Whispers began before warnings ever did. A rival group noticed his distraction, the softening of his routines, the hesitation in his decisions. In Joon-ho's world, care could be mistaken for weakness. And weakness invited trouble. Nia sensed something was wrong before she understood it. One evening, as she locked up the center, a stranger lingered too long across the street. Another day, an unfamiliar car slowed near her apartment. Nothing happened, but the unease stayed with her, heavy and cold. Joon-ho found out the same night a message reached him, clear, deliberate, and threatening. Her name was mentioned. That was the moment fear finally reached him. He went to her immediately, ignoring every rule he had built to protect himself. When Nia opened the door and saw him standing there, worry written across his face, her heart tightened. "You're in danger," he said quietly. "Because of me." He explained enough for her to understand the risk without pulling her into the darkness of details. His voice held guilt, not command. He didn't ask her to be brave. He didn't ask her to stay. "I'll step away," he said. "I'll make sure no one comes near you again. Even if it means leaving for good." Nia looked at him for a long moment. Then she surprised him. "You don't get to decide alone," she said. "You don't get to protect me by disappearing." She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. The hug was firm, steady, and full of choice. Joon-ho froze, then slowly held her back, careful, grateful, undone. "I'm not afraid of who you are," she continued softly. "I'm afraid of losing what we haven't even finished building." For the first time, Joon-ho understood something clearly. Strength was not standing alone. Strength was letting someone stand with you. That night, as he walked away, he made a promise. Not just to protect her, but to change the world that made protection necessary. And Nia, watching from her doorway, knew this love would not be easy, but it would be real. The days that followed were quieter, but not empty. Joon-ho kept his promise. The unfamiliar car disappeared. The lingering strangers were gone. The world around Nia slowly returned to normal, though the memory of fear still rested lightly in her chest. What surprised her most was not the danger, but the calm that came after, knowing Joon-ho had chosen honesty over control. They met again at the community center, not by accident this time, but by agreement. Sunlight filtered through the windows, casting soft shapes on the floor. The space felt safe, familiar, and right for a conversation they had both been avoiding. Joon-ho spoke first. "I've spent most of my life believing trust was something you lost once and never recovered," he said. "Every betrayal taught me to build higher walls." Nia listened without interrupting, her hands folded in her lap. "I loved someone once," he continued. "I trusted the wrong people. When everything fell apart, I decided it was safer to feel nothing at all." His voice did not shake, but the truth behind it was heavy. Nia finally spoke. "I grew up learning that love doesn't always protect you," she said softly, "but it teaches you how to heal." Their words met in the quiet space between them. No blame. No defense. Just understanding. When Joon-ho stood to leave, Nia rose with him. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. She opened her arms and he stepped into them. The hug was longer this time, filled with comfort rather than surprise. It was a promise without words. For Joon-ho, it felt like breathing again after years underwater. I trust you, Nia said simply. Those words meant more to him than power ever had. As they parted, Joon-ho knew healing was not about erasing the past. It was about choosing differently in the present. And Nia knew love was not fragile, it was patient. Outside, the city moved on as always. But inside both their hearts, something steady and strong had begun to grow. Not fear. Not distance. But trust. The choice did not come suddenly. It grew quietly in the space between late nights and early mornings. In every moment Joon-ho thought of Nia's smile instead of his own reflection. For the first time, the life he had built felt too heavy to carry into the future he wanted. He stood alone in his office, the city spread beneath him. Reports lay neatly arranged on his desk, each one a reminder of power, influence, and control. Once, these things had defined him. Now they felt distant. Mrs. Park watched him carefully from across the room. You're thinking of leaving, she said gently. Joon-ho nodded. Not everything, he replied. But enough. He began the slow, careful process of stepping away from the darker side of his empire, shifting control, closing doors that should never have been opened. It wasn't easy. There were meetings filled with tension and long silences that spoke louder than words. Still he stood firm. For the first time his decisions were guided not by fear, but by hope. When he told Nia, they sat together on a quiet bench near the community center. She listened closely, searching his face. You don't have to change for me, she said honestly. I'm not, he answered. I'm changing for the life I want to live, with you if you'll still have me. Nia reached for his hand, holding it with calm certainty. She didn't promise perfection. She didn't ask for guarantees. She simply stayed. Days passed and the world around them softened. Joon-ho spent more time in places that felt real, helping at the center, listening to children's laughter, learning how ordinary happiness sounded. Power faded into the background, replaced by purpose. One evening as they walked side by side under quiet streetlights, Joon-ho stopped. I don't want a life where I have to hide parts of myself from you, he said. Nia leaned into him, resting her head briefly against his shoulder. It wasn't dramatic. It was gentle. Then don't, she replied. In that moment, Joon-ho understood something clearly. Love was not about losing yourself. It was about becoming someone better, together. And the future, once uncertain, finally felt possible. The night air was cool and calm, carrying the soft hum of the city. Joon-ho stood beside Nia at the edge of the street where everything had begun. The lights were brighter now, the crowd thinner, but the memory remained clear. This was the place where two strangers had collided and unknowingly changed each other's lives. Nia looked around, recognizing it at once. Why here? She asked quietly. Because this is where I first saw you, Joon-ho replied. Not who you were to the world, but who you were. They stood together, watching people pass, each person wrapped in their own story. Joon-ho took a slow breath. For a man who had faced danger without blinking, this moment felt more important than any deal he had ever made. I spent most of my life hiding behind a name, he said. Power made people listen, but it never made them care. Nia turned toward him, her expression gentle and open. You cared before you knew anything about me, he continued. You spoke to me like I mattered. You reminded me I was human. He held out his hands, not asking, just offering. Nia placed her hands in his without hesitation. I can't promise a perfect life, Joon-ho said. But I promise honesty. I promise effort. And I promise to choose you every day. Nia felt her chest tighten, not with fear but with certainty. I don't need perfection, she replied. I just need truth and presence. They stepped into each other's arms, holding one another beneath the open sky. The hug was unspoken agreement, a future shaped not by titles or fear, but by trust. Cars passed. Voices echoed. Life continued around them. But in that moment the world felt small and steady. As they pulled apart, Joon-ho smiled, softly, freely for the first time. The weight he had carried for years felt lighter. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. A promise made in the open with nothing left to hide. Sunlight spilled gently over the city streets, golden and warm. Birds called from the trees, and the faint scent of fresh coffee drifted from nearby cafes. Nia stood behind the counter of her very own art cafe, carefully arranging colorful pastries and hand-painted mugs. Every corner of the space reflected her dreams, bright, welcoming, and alive. A soft knock at the door made her glance up. Kang Joon-ho stepped inside, his familiar calm presence filling the room. He carried no suits today, no reminders of the world he once ruled. Just himself, and the quiet certainty that had grown over months of effort and trust. "You did it," he said, his voice warm and easy. Nia smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "We did it," she corrected gently, remembering that he had been by her side in every decision, every step. Joon-ho walked closer, taking in the small details, the murals painted on the walls, the neatly stacked art supplies, and the laughter of a few early customers. It wasn't power or money that made this world real. It was life, it was love, it was shared effort. He reached out, and Nia leaned into him, their foreheads touching briefly. The hug that followed was slow and steady, filled with all the unspoken words. Gratitude, hope, relief, and a quiet kind of joy. This was their forever, small and perfect, built not on grand declarations but on constant choice. "Thank you," he whispered, "for trusting me, for letting me stay." "And thank you," Nia replied, "for learning how to be part of this world, our world." Outside, the city moved as always, but inside, their little corner of it was filled with warmth. Malik peeked from the back, waving and grinning, proud of his sister and happy to see Joon-ho smile without the weight of titles or danger. They spent the day together, helping customers, laughing at small mistakes, and sharing quiet moments that mattered more than anything else. Every hug, every shared glance, every simple touch reminded them that love wasn't about perfection, it was about presence. As evening fell, Joon-ho and Nia stepped outside, hand in hand. The sky glowed with gold and pink, soft and endless, like a promise that stretched into the future. They didn't need to say anything. The world could see it in the way they walked together, steady, unshakable, and full of hope. Some loves begin with a glance, others with danger, and some, like theirs, begin quietly, grow steadily, and last forever.